All right, we're live. I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. This is the Blacks in Technology Google Hangout live event with Tony Sebro from the Software Freedom Conservancy. This is kind of a quick, we can kind of put this together pretty quickly because the deadline for this internship program ends in a week or so. But I wanted to get Tony on so that he can discuss what the internship program is about, how people can sign up for it if they're interested. And so I want to welcome Tony Sebro to the show. Hey, what's going on, Tony?
Hey, what's going on, Greg? I'm really happy to be here. I'm excited to be on the Hangout, and I'm looking forward to talking about Conservancy and about Outreachy.
Great. So tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got involved in the Software Freedom Conservancy.
Sure. So my background is I'm a lawyer. I've been working in virtually all aspects of intellectual property law my entire career. So I started out with a mechanical engineering degree. Decided, actually, I was working as an intern for Alcoa, and decided, you know what, I'm not sure if I really love engineering. I like it, but I also like to argue. I like to write. Thought about doing something else, and so I sat for the LSAT and decided I was going to apply for law school and business school. So once I graduated, I felt like I really wanted to stay involved in the technology space, and so I started out practicing as a patent lawyer. I've done, filed patent applications. I've been involved in patent litigation, licensing. I did some work at IBM on the business development side, doing some selling and licensing intellectual property assets. Went back into private practice. Found myself at Conservancy because I was looking for an opportunity to work in the nonprofit space as well, give back to the community in a way. And Conservancy is a public charity. The mission is to develop and support the development of ethical technology, ethical software. And so from that perspective, we're talking about free and open source software that's freely licensed for the public to use, study, modify, distribute their modifications, et cetera. And so I serve as the organization's general counsel. Conservancy acts as an umbrella organization. So for those in the audience who are software developers who are involved in the software space, a lot of our member projects are better known than we are, and that's fine with us. But Git, the distributed version control system that's at the heart of GitHub and GitLab and a lot of other social coding hosting websites. Git is one of our projects. Selenium, which is a browser testing platform, is one of our projects. Wine, which many people who are using Mac or Linux and they want to run Windows apps, they use Wine. Wine's one of our projects. If they're, depending on how hardcore you're out there, we have QEMU for folks who are doing virtualization. Evergreen, which is a system that libraries use to manage their inventory. So it kind of runs the gamut. So there's about 40 different projects that are under our umbrella, and I act as their lawyer. Each project is comprised of a lot of different developers who are working on these projects. So Git isn't owned or managed by any one company. It's a community of developers. Some of them might work for Google. Some of them might work for GitHub. Some of them might be hobbyists or academics, but they all want to collaborate and work together on Git. And we provide them with the sort of the corporate framework to allow them to do that. And then everything they do is licensed freely. The source code is available for people to study and figure out and make modifications if they want and distribute those modifications. And so that's our way of contributing to the software space. And we think in an ethical, open, transparent way.
Excellent.
So I've been in Conservancy for about 5 years, and I was going to say that in addition to being the home for these different projects, we're also the home of Outreachy. And Outreachy is an initiative that's designed to target groups that are underrepresented in open source software and get them involved.
Okay, excellent. And for those that are watching the broadcast right now. If you have any questions for Tony, feel free to put them in the chat window. I think if you're on YouTube, there should be a group chat window in the lower right hand corner. So just type your questions in there, and we'll get to them if we can. We've got a limited amount of time, so we're going to try to get some questions into Tony, and hopefully we can get some of yours answered as well. So tell us a little bit more about Outreachy. Like how did the program start, and what's their mission? Sure.
So Outreachy started actually back in 2006. It was started as the Outreach Program for Women, and it was founded at the GNOME Foundation. So GNOME is a desktop environment that many people who are using Linux distributions use as their desktop, or their user interface to use Linux. So this started as the GNOME Foundation. They recognized that women were underrepresented in free and open source software development. And so they started this program. The program began to expand beyond GNOME and started inviting other projects to contribute and to get involved. In 2015, GNOME, the Outreachy coordinators, and Conservancy realized that Conservancy was a better home, in part because of how we're structured. I mean, our entire operation is built around providing a home for different open source software projects, communities of developers, etc. So we have the infrastructure that could support Outreachy. Mm-hmm. And so GNOME remains involved, but Conservancy is now the corporate home of Outreachy. Around that same time, Outreachy they rebranded from the Outreach Program for Women to Outreachy. And in that context, they decided to expand the scope to include not just women, but also trans and genderqueer men, and also men of color in the United States. So African-American, Latino, Native American, Pacific Islander. And so the idea is these are all groups that are underrepresented in STEM in general. Right. But we found that open source software is sort of unique space in that there's a culture around getting involved in an open source software community. It's one thing to get a job hired at company X, and they say, we want you to work on this code that's our proprietary code, and you're just following the instructions of your manager, and you're operating within that corporate structure. And they may have somebody in HR whose job it is to try to make sure that structure avoids issues linked to diversity or discrimination, rather. And they may not do a good job of it, but they're trying in some level. Within open source software communities, the structures can be less formal. There's certainly nobody in HR. You might just have a maintainer, or what they might call a benevolent dictator for life. You might have different community members who form some sort of board, but there isn't the same infrastructure. And so sometimes the communities can be hostile and they don't realize it. Sometimes they can be very progressive on some issues and regressive on others. And so part of what Outreachy is trying to do is also make sure that we're providing these communities an opportunity to be welcoming and to encourage people to roll up their sleeves and contribute. Now, the nature of open source software development is a little different than maybe in a proprietary environment, because a maintainer is receiving suggestions in the form of patches from all over the world. And and anyone's welcome in theory to participate. But to get in, you have to be persistent. You have to, frankly, have the confidence that you have a right to be there, and that you have a say in what's going on, and you want to contribute. And sometimes there are people who have found it difficult to penetrate these cultures, these communities. And so Outreachy is the people who are participating in Outreachy. You have organizations who recognize this is important, not just from an altruistic perspective, but because in the long term, it's going to make these open source software projects and communities better if they're more inclusive, if they're able to attract talent and attract contributions from a broader pool. And so you have people who are there who serve as mentors, who are saying, we're going to work with anybody who says they want to be an intern, and then interns can apply. The mentors are there to help, and so the interns aren't just learning about the technical aspects of contributing to an open source software project. They're also learning how to navigate the culture, how to navigate the mailing list, how to navigate the message boards, how to roll up their sleeves, get in on our IRC channel and ask questions and be persistent, be stubborn.
Right.
And frankly, I think, and not just in STEM, but in a lot of places, people who are underrepresented and who don't see themselves reflected in leadership don't know that they have a right to be stubborn. They don't know that they have a right to be persistent. And so Outreachy is there to say, you know what, look, you can be, and we're here to help. We're gonna create an environment where you really do feel included and nurtured and supported.
So how is this facilitated? Because I know I've never contributed to anything open source, but I've heard stories just about how difficult it may for beginners to get involved, and also they think that they have to be this genius in order to get involved in open source. And I listen to a lot of different technical podcasts, and what people don't understand is there are a lot of ways for people to get involved in open source software and not necessarily having to write one bit of code. So tell us a little bit about kind of how you facilitate this whole mentoring process, how you get people to be stubborn, right? And then talk to us a little bit about some of the different roles, the internship roles that you have. So, maybe it's not just coding. Maybe somebody maybe they're doing documentation for an open source project or something like that. So, if you can go into that a little bit for us.
So certainly. So, to start off, the application process. Well, let me take a step back. Conservancy acts as a facilitator. The Outreachy program acts as a facilitator. What we do is we end up pairing up different open source software projects, some of them part of Conservancy, some of them not, like the Linux kernel, or projects that are housed at Mozilla or at Wikimedia. And we pair them up with interns. And so the interns, that they apply by making a contribution. So basically what I posted here in the chat is a link to a website. This has all of the different participating organizations that are currently involved and are currently accepting applications right now.
Okay.
So you can see that their applications, there's a Linux kernel. There are different Linux distributions. If you want to contribute to Fedora or Debian, there are opportunities there. If you're interested in virtualization, QEMU, the Zen project, Overt. If you're interested in web technology, I mentioned Mozilla. Cloud and storage is very hot right now. OpenStack, there's some opportunities to work on OpenStack. You can work on Wikimedia. There's the whole list is there. So the way it works is you pick a project. If you're a potential applicant, you pick a project, and under the project, you see there are different little tasks. You can either, for Debian, you can do some benchmarking of scientific packages for general and architecture-specific builds. You can add a secure mail server support to FreedomBox, right? So there are different things you can go in, and all the information is there. If you want to apply, it's not about just sending a resume in and having a resume scrutinized and saying, oh, well, do you know this many languages? Do you know this? Have you had this experience? Right. Where did you go to school, etc. You just start making a contribution. And from our perspective, it's better if you make several small contributions than try to take on the biggest thing you can find and then disappear for some period of time. Because the goal is again, not just to work on those contributions, but the goal is also to start to get to know the community. So there are mentors with each project who are standing by with each organization, who are waiting and on the lookout for applicants. When an applicant takes on a little project, they say, okay, well, I'm going to go to, I'm interested in OpenStack. And, right. There's some, I want to add continuous integrations and tests for the OpenStack identity service, right? That require, you might need to know a little Python. It might involve some shell scripting. You're kind of new at this. You don't really know what you're doing yet, but you say, you know what, I'm going to give it a shot. What's the, and you start going on there. You start asking questions. You click on the, there's an apply link there. You start, digging around, trying to ask questions. There are mentors who are there to answer those questions. They might give you a little bit of guidance about what the next step is. You start trying to make contributions. You might say, okay, well, listen, mentor, can we meet next Tuesday and have an IRC meeting or meet in Slack or whatever your preferred communication of choice is, maybe by phone. And so then the mentor might agree to meet with you, and then you'll ask questions and things like that. The application window, or the window to start an application, closes March 30th. So that's a week from Thursday. So there's not a lot of time. Right. But once the application window closes, you can still make modifications to your application up until April 28th. So basically, just get your foot in the door by March 30th. And then for the rest of that next month or so, you're going to continue to make contributions. And from our perspective, the great thing about this is that even if you don't get selected, worst case scenario, you've had a month where you've been trying and figuring out, and you've gotten introduced, you've gotten a taste of what it means to contribute to an open source software project. And we found that we have a number of applicants or a number of interns who didn't get an internship on their first application, but then came back and applied again, and they got on their second or third because they built on what they learned during that application process. So from our perspective, look, there are a lot of places where to apply, you gotta send your resume, and then they might have you do some sort of whiteboard. That's not what we're trying to do. We really want to see you work in action, and it's as much about being persistent, being dogged, and receiving the feedback that you're getting and asking again, as it is about starting off as some sort of super genius, rock star coder. This is the participating organizations select projects that are designed to be fairly newbie friendly. Some aren't, but a lot of them are. And you also mentioned that there are some, as you mentioned, there are some projects that are documentation or user interface, right? So, I'm looking for one now. I know Wikimedia, you might have some on that front. They're looking for some people to help with the Zotero translator and document the process. And so you might need a little bit of JavaScript, but they also need some documentation. Fedora, I think they've already had enough applications for this one, but there was an opportunity to work on a coloring book that they were putting out to help teach free and open source software concepts. So that was really more about technical illustration and documentation than it was about hardcore coding. But I think that one they're swamped with applicants. But that's the kind of stuff that does go on. So there's really a lot of different ways to get involved. There are a ton of different opportunities, and frankly, projects are still hungry for applicants. So, and I should also mention, since I mentioned this at the start, this is a paid internship. So participating interns receive a $5,500 stipend. They also receive a $500 travel scholarship, which can be applied to traveling to a free and open source software conference that's relevant to the project. So if you want to go to a Linux Foundation event, if you're working Linux kernel, if you want to go to something more general like OSCON, you might be able to get, you can get up to $500 to cover your costs of travel. And so, we get people coming from all over the world. It doesn't always cover all the travel, but maybe there's something local in their part of the world that they can go to, and we help defray those costs.
Excellent. I did see here on Wikimedia, create user guides to help with translation outreach, localization experience, and technical writing skills. This is kind of the requirement. So very cool. So and this is just from some of the, I guess, horror stories that you hear about the open source community, with people being belligerent to people who are new, right?
Sure.
How do you all kind of mitigate that type of thing? Like I know that these internships are, correct me if I'm wrong, they're remote.
They're all remote. That's correct.
So when a person signs up and they start contributing to these different projects, how do you all kind of shield them away from any of the belligerents, any of the, it may be some sexism or anything like that may happen within the community?
Well, frankly, we don't shield them entirely, because I think part of the goal is to impart the confidence, to empower people to contribute even in the face of belligerents. And so I think part of what the mentorship process is that we identify and select mentors who recognize the value of promoting inclusivity and diversity. And these mentors are people who are experienced in their various projects. They have a certain amount of gravitas. They have some stroke in their projects. So they may not be the maintainer themselves, but they're a known entity in those projects. And so the interns are able to kind of get a rub, so to speak, from the mentors, because the mentors are saying, look, these people are working with us, etc. Also, we also ask, and this is interesting, it goes into how open source projects can become participating projects in Outreachy. We ask participating projects to come up with at least the funding for one intern. The mentors are unpaid, they're volunteers. But that way, so if, let's say, you started an open source software project and you have 100 contributors and it's of a certain size, and you want to have an Outreachy intern next year. The majority of our funding comes from generous corporate donors or public charity. We do get some individual donors as well for Outreachy, and certainly get a lot of individual donors for a conservancy as a whole. But we would ask your project to say, you know what, if you want to participate, you got to have a little skin in the game. So we want you to help secure funding for at least that first intern. And then we might be able to partner you with companies or other sources of funding to fund the second, third, and fourth intern if you have a large enough community to support that. And so as a result, we find that the projects that are participating, they want to be there. They're not just saying, oh, well, hey, this is free labor that showed up on our doorstep. We don't think much of them. We're generally hostile to this idea. We don't think this is a good idea. We don't think this is valuable. We have just one social justice warrior who popped up as a mentor, but the rest of us are hostile to that. That's not really what it's about. So the projects, from a semi-official perspective, they want to be part of this. They recognize the value. The mentors certainly recognize this, and they're willing to devote their time on a volunteer basis to help mentor these interns. And so that's how we safeguard it. But look, if you're going to get involved in an open source community, there's going to be people that are going to believe in, the idea of, well, we're a meritocracy. We want a diversity of ideas and a diversity of code, and that's the only thing that matters, right? Personally, I think they miss out on the fact that a more inclusive environment broadens the pool, as I said before, and results in better code in the long run.
Right.
But we're not there to put these interns in a bubble where they never interact with those kinds of schools of thought. We're there to put them in an environment where they feel empowered to say, you know what, that's what you think, but this is what I'm willing to do. I'm willing to work hard. I'm willing to be persistent, and I will earn my place in this community by doing that. And we've had some tremendous success in that regard. I think it was 2014 or 2015. Linux Foundation put out a study showing how many, which companies, which organizations were making the greatest contributions to the Linux kernel. Mm-hmm. And Outreachy interns as a collective were ranked 13th or 14th on that list. So this is next to Fortune 100, Fortune 500 companies, right? Oh, wow. So these are interns that are making a contribution to one of the most important free and open source software projects and communities on the planet. And they're making contributions that are getting accepted, they're getting merged, and they're part of the kernel, right? So so that's the kind of stuff that's happening. And I'll also note, this is not an internship that is just for students. So 18 and up. We have mothers who are trying to re-enter the workforce, who are trying to make changes, make career changes. We have, there was one intern, one applicant who was mopping floors, trying to make ends meet. decided they wanted to get involved in open source software development, became an applicant. Now they're working as a manager in a big tech company. There's somebody else, another favorite anecdote, another person, she was working the cheese counter at Whole Foods. And, now a kernel developer, right? My wife told me I can't make any puns about stacking cheese and stacking cheese. But yeah, so yeah, the point is that we're getting people, and the goal is not just to find people who are looking for something to do during their summer break, although that's fine. We certainly accept those interns. But if I was talking to somebody, I went to OzCon last year, and there was somebody who was a flight attendant, and she decided to take a class at the local community center about learning to write code. She's taking some classes online, and she's going to apply to Outreachy. That's great, and so that's the goal here is what's unique and special about open source software is that the code is right there. And if you're willing to just stick your nose in it and figure it out, the code is right there. It's available. It's on the surface, and and I really feel like it can be a powerful tool towards closing the digital divide, towards that can lower the barrier to entry into software development. Because if you want to figure out how to make improvements to Microsoft Word, you can't. And I'm not knocking their business model. That's it's fine. But if you want to figure out how to make improvements to OpenStack, you can. Even if you're not participating in Outreach, you can. It's just a question of, do you want to bother trying to figure it out? Do you have that itch? And so, at Outreach, we're trying to facilitate that.
Excellent information. And so before we get out of here, how can our audience find more information about Outreachy? And then tell us, what is it? You actually have 2, I guess, slots that you have, I guess, 2 different time frames. You have from May to August, and then tell us a little bit about that as well.
Sure. So we have 2 rounds every year. The application window to join our summer round is open right now. The summer round will run from May 30th to August 30th. It's a full-time internship, so applicants are expected to be able to devote 40 hours a week. So if you're taking a full-time class load or if you have a full-time job, this is not really a nights and weekends kind of a deal. The second round, it runs from December to March.
Okay.
And that's sort of our winter round. We also get applicants from the Southern Hemisphere because they might be college students who are taking their summer break. But as I said, the application window for the upcoming round is open right now, and it's open until March 30th. If you're interested, you go to outreachy.org. The website is in the chat, and there's a button for apply. You create an account, and you select one of the projects, one of the many projects that are listed, and you just roll up your sleeves and start making contributions, start introducing yourself. And you have until March 30th to start that process. And then you can continue to make modifications and update your contributions up until April 28th, at which point then projects will make their selections. And then you'll know whether you have an internship that starts on May 30th. Frankly, even if you're not 100% sure that you're interested in doing this, I recommend giving it a shot anyway, because the application process is designed to be a learning process, to be a learning opportunity. And even if you don't get in, or if you decide you don't want to do it, you apply, and then boom, you can apply again in the winter round, and you'll have that much more experience under your belt. You'll be that much more confident in your ability to do this, et cetera. We would also encourage, if people are interested in this stuff, I would also point them towards Google Summer of Code. Google runs a similar program. It's not focused in any way on diversity or inclusivity, but there are other opportunities to work on open source software projects, and you receive a stipend from Google.
Okay.
So you can just Google Google Summer of Code for more information about that. So yeah, we like their program, and they like and support our program as well. And frankly, for applicants who get into both, we tend to nudge them towards Google Summer of Code, because that frees up another slot for somebody else from a group that's underrepresented in free and open source software.
Excellent, excellent information, Tony. I definitely appreciate you coming on tonight and telling our audience about Outreachy, about the Software Freedom Conservancy, and hopefully, the people that are watching will take advantage of this opportunity. If you want to get involved with open source software, if you've ever thought about getting involved and didn't know how, now this is your opportunity. Outreachy is your guide to do that. So check them out at outreachy.org, at Outreachy on Twitter, at Conservancy, and at Keynote 2K. Those are all in the comments. And again, thanks a lot, Tony. We definitely appreciate it.
Oh, this has been a blast. I really enjoyed it. Thanks for having me on. Have me back on anytime you want.
Oh, definitely, definitely.
About everything.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
All right. Take it easy.
Take care. And if you are audience members, if you like what you're seeing, this is kind of one of our the first times we've done a format like this that wasn't part of a series. So if you like this format, leave us some comments in the YouTube video notes. Let us know how you like it. If you like this format, maybe we'll continue this for the podcast instead of just doing it audio. Maybe we'll do both. Let us know. Do you want to see just the video, or would you like the video and the audio? Just leave us, comments in the show notes, or not in the show notes, but in the comment section on YouTube, and let us know. Until then, we want to thank you for joining us tonight. And like I always like to say on Bit Tech Talk, tech yourself before you wreck yourself. Take care.